Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ripped Body podcast. I am joined by Coach Matt today, and we're answering some of your questions. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Happy to be here.
How you doing? How's Vegas treating you, man?
Vegas is good. Vegas is good. I was traveling last week, so I have a little bit of a cold from that, but it's almost gone, and I'm feeling much better.
Good. Glad to hear it.
How about you?
Ooh, Japan's treating me well. It's good. I was in Taiwan last week and ended up with food poisoning towards the end of it, which was a bit rough. No regrets, though. I did eat everything. I was with a group and I just didn't want to say no to anything that was served. It was one of those situations where it's kind of a fixed meal. It's sharing all around. So I just tried everything. Lots of stuff I wouldn't have typically gone for. But hey, it was a good time. And then, funnily enough, just as I flew out, Eric was flying in. Eric Helms, that is, for his, I think it was his debut pro bodybuilding show. So that's a bit of a shame. Otherwise, I'd have stayed on for a couple of days to cheer him on. But hey, all good. And then over on the weekend, we Macro Factor Japan, our other company, Athlete Body, which is a Japan-focused company. We sponsored a power building event, which is a physique show. So this is bodybuilding, but in swim trunks. So you get to kind of hide the quads, so not do quite as much leg training. It was a physique show on the beach with also a deadlift competition tagged on at the end. So it was pretty cool. It was like a fun bodybuilding, powerlifting event. And we sponsored that as the people who've bought Macro Factor to Japan. And yeah, we got some good eyeballs on the app. So that was fun. It's just a bit exhausting to dash down to that island and back just in 2 days because it's really far. It's down past Osaka, so yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't think we have anything like that. I know we have the men's physique and the bathing suits and obviously powerlifting. I've never heard of a hybrid competition. That's really cool.
Yeah, the idea was to make it just more fun and accessible for the average person. So they even had some of the local high school students do performances on the stage before the show, so getting the local community involved, and there were like stands with all sorts of food, and yeah, it was good.
Nice.
Yeah, other than the rain at the start. And then I trundled myself off to the convenience store and I bought, I think it was 26 umbrellas, which was the most that I could carry, and I brought them back and just started handing them out to the competitors, which is the people that we want to get in good with, because if the competitors use the app, then that will trickle down onto people that follow them. Yeah, things are good, man. Should we get to the questions?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, first one. Do you recommend cutting through the holiday season? What are the pros and or the cons? So we haven't talked about this in advance, so I'm interested in what you got to say here. You mentioned that you were having a discussion with a client about this.
Yeah, this is something that's come up with clients over the years, actually many times. I think it's kind of a complicated answer and there is a lot of nuance we have to consider. So I'm actually very curious to hear what you have to say about this.
Matt, like people got no time for nuance, and nuanced answers don't go viral or popular, and people don't trust people who give nuanced answers. So can you just give your one-line answer and we'll move on?
I think where it gets complicated, and this is the conversation I was having, I have a guy who's been dieting for a long time, kind of a slow approach. It wasn't super aggressive, but he's like been cutting for over 20 weeks with a few breaks sprinkled in. But he's reached the point where he's getting down to the last bit of fat. His food is getting low and he's feeling a lot of the fatigue and not having a hard time. Like he's doing a good job, but he's feeling it. Like the calories are low. And we were talking about the holiday season coming up and he's got a lot of travel, at least here in the States. Pretty much Thanksgiving to the end of the year is usually packed with holiday events. So family stuff, work events, travel, it's just a really difficult time. I think most people gain a little bit of weight. And so a lot of times when I talk to people about the holidays, I know that we tell people like, if you celebrate Christmas, you don't have to stress too much about tracking on Christmas Day or on Thanksgiving. It's okay to have some balance and enjoy the holidays a little bit. A lot of times I found that can not sabotage people's fat loss, but it can be a little bit slower, right? If they're having like these days thrown in where it's kind of just a free for all. And so what I was telling him is like, you can make progress through the holidays and stay on your cut. It's going to be a lot harder depending on your situation. And I think this is where the nuance comes in. It's going to be easier for some people, harder for some people. And so I basically told him like, look, if you try to stick on this diet, you might lose a little bit of weight, probably not going to be all that much compared to just a normal 6-week block. So it may be worth just intentionally going into a maintenance period, just taking kind of an extended diet break. Either way, at the end of the holiday season, you probably won't have lost much weight, but by going into maintenance intentionally, you take away this mental stress of feeling like you should be dieting, feeling like you're failing, right? If you're like in a deficit most of the week, but then Thanksgiving throws it off, you kind of just have this week where you've spent trying to stick to this low calorie intake, but you haven't really made a lot of progress. And I think that if you can, at least in this situation, we were talking about if you just take a month or two and just take it as like a long diet break, aim for maintenance, it's okay. You're probably going to hit January feeling a lot more refreshed. You'll have been eating more, which is probably going to be good for you mentally and physically. And then compared to running into January, already kind of burned out from dieting for 2 months without seeing much progress, it can feel a lot more of like a fresh start where you've been recharged a bit through the holidays. And I think the big thing is just the mental pressure of like, I should be losing weight, but I want to enjoy this family time or this holiday party, whatever it is. I think it can be tough depending on how much you have going on and how long you've been dieting already.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You're going into January then on a psychological win rather than entering frustrated. So you mentioned 6 weeks and you mentioned 1 to 2 months. I suggested with the clients before to take the last 6 weeks and sit at maintenance, the last 6 weeks of the year. Is there one specific client right now that you have in mind for this? And have you decided on it?
In this situation, he had some vacations coming up as well before the holidays. So it was going to be like a trip overseas, a trip with his family. It wasn't going to be great for food anyway. And then that kind of rolled into Thanksgiving. So it was a bit longer, but yeah, for most people, I think it's the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That would be my main.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. And what is the context here? How long has this person been dieting? How much weight have they lost?
They've been dieting for about 26, 28 weeks. Don't know the exact time frame.
Yep.
We've had a couple diet breaks sprinkled in or went on vacation for a week or two. We're kind of just loosely tracked. So it hasn't been 26 weeks of straight just cutting.
Yep.
Lost about 20 pounds. And I think now the calories are around 1,800 or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is
standard.
Kind of, that's tough.
Yeah. It's kind of
you're
standard.
gonna end up there, but that's tough to balance through like the holidays with family stuff. Yeah, it's right. Not uncommon at all to be at 1,800 calories, but I think that's a tough place to be heading into Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year.
Yeah. So this person started just after the winter. They started mid-spring. They've then dieted for the last 6 months and they're 20 pounds down. They've done an incredible job. And now they're coming into this holiday period. The longer you diet, the harder it gets. And they're just a bit fatigued and a little bit worried. And so in that context, I think this approach makes sense. Now, before we get into when it doesn't make sense, because I think there is a big caveat here, big caveat here. How do you make this adjustment for this person? What are you recommending as the guidelines for them hitting maintenance for these last 6 to 8 weeks of the year?
So I'm calculating this based off of the progress he's been seeing. I think in his case, he was losing about half a pound a week recently. So I would add about 250, maybe 300 calories to account for a little bit of the metabolic adaptation. As people eat more, they tend to burn a little bit more. So nothing crazy, but just bumping the food up a little bit and knowing that over the next 6 weeks, if we increase the food and he starts losing weight, we might be able to bump it up a little bit more even. And that gives him some wiggle room for eating more food. That would be my main thing, right? Giving him the flexibility to enjoy these holiday events without feeling like he's going off plan or has to stick to 1,800 calories. If by the end he's eating 2,400 calories and roughly maintaining his weight, I think it's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, great. So those listening and wondering the math on that, you take your rate of weight loss in pounds, multiply that by 500, and then you add on, okay, so there's this heuristic that we could argue back and forth about with when it comes to metabolic adaptation, but you can add on your body weight in pounds to that number and then add that. So let's say you've been losing a pound per week, which isn't the case here, but let's say you've been losing a pound per week. So that's 1 multiplied by 500 plus body weight. And let's say this person is now 180 pounds. So this would be 680 calories they would add in and they would hold around that level. Now, of course, right? So they're 1,800 calories now, 680 calorie addition. That's damn close. That's damn close to 2,500 calories. You may as well call it 2,500 calories. And then if we want to make it even simpler for this person, because the idea is that they have a break, not just from the lower calories, but also from the rigidity of the counting to a certain point. And we're going to come back to that rigidity idea when we come to the third question. You could consider it a range. So hit anywhere between 2,400 and 2,600 calories and you're good. And if for some reason weight starts to tick up after the initial bump from water, gut content, and glycogen, you can dab that down by a couple of hundred calories and you're good. That's you at maintenance. And for those who are thinking kilos, instead of multiplying it by 500, you'd multiply the kilo number by 250. So yeah.
Cool.
You were going to move on to the next question, weren't you? I was going to say,
Was.
important caveat. Yeah, I forgot the caveat here. Sorry. What's the caveat, Andy?
What's the caveat, Andy?
Thanks, Matt. I'm really glad you asked. So if you're someone who has found yourself the last few years in a cycle of either struggling, really, really struggling through the holidays, then jumping into an over-eager diet in January, and then falling off the wagon before spring, or you're someone who just hasn't been making any progress recently, and if you're honest, you haven't been putting that much effort into things, then I think the opposite can be true. What I mean is, this time throughout the holiday period, these last couple of months of the year, can be the perfect opportunity to practice getting back into things and building momentum. Because if you can learn to keep up your habits during the hardest of times and still see progress, then that fills you with confidence for the rest of the time. And it also gets you out of this all or nothing mental trap. Because a lot of people, they wait for the perfect run of time. They're going to wait. Look, most people are going to wait until January to do anything because they think that this is the perfect time when they don't have any blockers and they've got no holidays. Fair enough. But what is that teaching you about going through busy periods with work or vacations? It's not really teaching you anything. You're only learning how to have success when all the circumstances are perfect. And life isn't perfect. You need to learn to do what you can when you can. And that is a skill and that takes time. So really, that's why we've decided to take on clients specifically with the goal of learning to do well through these holidays, which we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The other thing I was going to say too, I kind of skipped over when I was saying it depends. I think a lot of our clients are very busy, right? They have like jobs, they're going to have like work parties, family parties. You got to see like your family, your wife's family, kids stuff. If you don't have a lot of that going on and your holidays are not that busy, like it's probably fine.
Yeah.
This is why I wouldn't tell everyone like, oh, just stop dieting for 6 weeks. I don't really do a lot during the holidays. It probably wouldn't be that difficult for me to stay on track, but it's more if you're going to have like 6, 7, 8 events for sure in December, which is certainly not the case for everybody. I don't want to make this like blanket recommendation, just stop your diet for 6 weeks if it's not going to be a big deal for you.
Yeah, perfect. All right, on to the next question.
Yes. Okay. Next question. Andy, I've fallen off the wagon. I saw your email about fall coaching. I've let go pretty bad and need a swift kick to the butt. Got any spots left? So I think that he's asking, what approach would you recommend to get back on track with things after you've lost momentum and kind of fallen off the wagon a bit with things?
Yeah, so of course, reaching out for coaching, some kind of external accountability can be very helpful. You've got accountability then to someone that you trust and whose opinion and time that you value, but there's also that you got money on the line there. And that can be valuable buy-in as well, because you don't want to be wasting money. But let's set that aside for a moment and consider okay, when you've lost momentum, what can you do to get back on track? So there are a few approaches to this. I used to be of the opinion that you tear off the Band-Aid, go straight in and aim to do everything perfect. So this person, they haven't been training, they haven't been looking after their diet. Right from the get-go, I want you to get into the gym 4 days a week, non-negotiable. I want you to get out your macro factor logging app and track all of your food perfectly. And I'm going to give you a specific calorie target as well as protein, carb, and fat targets. And I want you to adhere to those rigidly. And we're going to do that right from the get-go. Also, let's throw in a step count there. Now, for someone who has been doing, let's say, most of those things, but 80% of the time and hasn't been seeing progress because of it, then tightening things up so that you are pretty much 100%, I think makes sense. And then you can loosen back from there once you do start seeing success. But if you've been doing almost nothing, then I think it makes sense to set yourself up with more easily attainable goals rather than just jumping into the deep end and hoping you've still remember how to swim, right?
Yeah.
What would I specifically recommend to this person? It really depends on where they're at, but let's imagine a situation where they've been doing nothing. Do you have a friend who regularly goes to the gym who you could join? You don't have to do exactly what they do, but having some form of accountability there where it's like, hey buddy, you coming tomorrow? Right? That can be powerful. So even on the days where you're not really feel like it, you don't want to let your friend down. And so you do go to the gym and just join them and keep with that. And choose a number of days that you go train that you can actually stick to. The second part is for the nutrition. If there are obvious areas where you can just give yourself a ban hammer, where it's like, look, okay, I have these habits that are simply not serving me. Like I often use the example of 2 generous pour whiskeys every night after work to unwind, or a habit of having a dessert after every meal. This is assuming that fat loss is the main problem that we've got here. Then I'm not sure if moderation is really the approach there. Frankly, a ban hammer may be the best. So when you're at home, boom, no more alcohol at night to quote unquote unwind. The desserts, just, you don't need it. This is just a pattern that you have built, a habit that you have built. And I think just ripping that out is going to be the best way for you. So looking to try to find these 1, 2, or 3 things that are going to move the needle the most for you and implementing those. And then once you've got those things in place, you've got those big wins, like the desserts, the whiskey, you're actually now back at the gym, you're with a friend, you're feeling motivated, you're starting to feel more pumped. Then you can dial things in from there. That's when I would bust out the progress tracker that we have. So that's ripbody.com/tracker. That's the progress tracker that we use with clients. It's free. Just make yourself a copy there. And then I would get back into more of the tracking. So really, that would be my advice to anyone wondering this. You don't have to wait until January. You don't have to wait until the perfect time. You can still do a lot. Any further thoughts on that one, Matt?
No, I think that's great, especially starting with just eliminating certain things. That's probably a lot easier than trying to stack on all these new habits and things like that. I think that's great. And that's kind of what I would recommend to someone who's just getting into fitness for the first time anyway. Just start with the basics, or then once you're in the gym, maybe start adding protein to all of your meals, start drinking more water, just track your food just to see what you're eating and just get in the habit of logging things. But yeah, start slow and get back into the habit of, like you said, doing the right things, avoiding the stuff that is an easy sabotage you can get rid of, and then you can start to dial things back in. But yeah, it can take a while. I know that I've stopped tracking for periods of time and just like loosely ate. And when I want to get back like locked into things, it can take a few weeks to get in the habit and figure out like what I'm eating. It's a lot to do at once.
Yeah, I think for anyone who's thinking, I'm not quite sure what a big win might be for myself, turning the logging into a game and kind of a bit of detective work. With the macro factor, you can take a photo of your food or drink and it will tell you the calories. And it's pretty damn good. Jeff Nippard, he was doing a video comparison series and he showed just how damn good it is. And I would do that and just log your food without trying to change anything. So you can see where the big wins likely are for yourself. You've done this diet audit over a week. You then get to choose, okay, where are the obvious places where you're going to pull calories out of, where you're going to stop yourself from doing that. So you're looking for areas where they're high calorie, but not very filling and satiating. So it might be that it could be the whiskeys. It could be you're having peanut butter jelly sandwiches and it's just really calorific. And maybe it's a case of having a bit more watermelon and yogurt. Just kind of a silly example there, but that calorie swap could really help you stay more satiated. Anyway, all right, on to the next question. So this one was from a former client. It's addressed to me, but I'm going to ask you first, Matt, as we've worked together for 3.5 years now. So this was from a former client. Hey, Andy, I'm still doing fine. I'm not mega ripped, but I look good for someone in their 40s. So the coaching opportunity that you mentioned, the 12-week full challenge, it sounds like something that I've been waiting for. It's not too long, but it will just give me a practical insight into how you have grown in coaching over the years, straighten out my compass, and help me push in the right way again. So I guess I'd summarize this question by saying that he's asking, what has changed about your coaching? And for this particular client, Tom, it was 10 years ago that we worked together. So obviously you've only got experience over the last few years, but what would you say has changed in that time, Matt?
Okay. I think generally in what I imagine is both of our coaching experience, because I've been coaching for a while as well. We see a lot of
10 years, 11,
12,
12,
10, 12, yeah. We see a lot of changes with science and research. Like I know now it's kind of clear you can build muscle with like 5 to 30 reps. And I remember when I started, it's like, oh, it has to be in this like specific hypertrophy range, things like that, protein recommendations. The big thing that comes to mind since working with you is we've really learned that for our clientele, a more relaxed approach to food works just as well. So we used to give everyone, regardless of their experience or goal, like specific macro goals, Usually it was like a training day target and a rest day target. So we had a bit of carb cycling built in, just very specific goals, which can work well, but it's a lot to track. It's a lot to plan if you're busy. And we've switched to just having a calorie target every day, a minimum protein target, and it works. It still works exceptionally well, I think. And it's much easier for a lot of people who are very busy and just don't have time to be thinking about food constantly. That's probably the biggest one that comes to mind when I think of, the past 3.5 years. And I think it's been really beneficial and helpful. But 10 years ago, I'm not sure what you were doing that's changed.
This is going to sound a little bit too fluffy, but hey, let's go in. Empathy. I just have more empathy now. And I could be a bit of a hard ass, and there are still times to be a hard ass, but I'm just better able to gauge when someone needs a stick versus a hug, as silly as that may sound. Yeah. And that can make all the difference, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're such a hard ass that clients end up lying to you because they're scared to tell you the truth of the matter, right? And I think I've been in situations where I found in the past that a client hasn't wanted to tell me the truth, and they've felt a bit of shame about not being able to, let's say, meet the standard that they felt was iron imposed. It shocked me because I wasn't feeling that, but they had put all of this pressure on themselves, which ultimately comes down to me, us, our responsibility for putting so much pressure on them in the way that we have framed things for them, working to be very cognizant of that, because the last thing we want is to push our clients into this all or nothing mindset, because we see that the clients who are the most successful over the long term, and of course, the longer we do this, the longer term we have clients, some clients we've been working with for years and years, which is fantastic. Truly honored, really. The thing that separates those that are successful over the long term from those that aren't is learning to ride these waves of stress and busy periods and not falling completely apart during those times. Learning to walk in the gray is one way I put it. Learning to do what you can when you can. So that's one big part of it. And then some of the other parts was, as you mentioned, for many clients, we move away from a training and a rest day target. We move to just a single target for each day. And that could look like a protein, carb, and fat target, or it could be a calorie budget with a protein minimum. And then we allow the carbs and fats to be flexible with a few kind of rules around that. So just enabling a little more flexibility for people so that they can sustain this. And then the final thing that comes to mind, the third one, was these small incremental changes over time. So you've seen how I'm sending updated snippets to you guys all the time, several times a week often, where I'll be like, hey guys, new snippet, and I'll be sharing it with the team. And this will be a new or updated way of explaining some advice to a client when they are, let's say, struggling with shoulder pain when bench pressing, for example, giving them a framework, right, for that. Or I'm getting hunger pangs in the afternoon. What do you recommend? Okay, what's a framework for that? And we'll be creating these snippets and then updating these snippets and sharing them among us. So that's one thing that's changed. It's something that I've always done, but it's something that I've really been working on to pull all of our knowledge together. So for your clients, my clients, we're all CC'd on the communication or BCC'd on the communication so that we can be learning from each other. So I learn from you, I learn from Sam, you guys learn from each other, we all learn from each other. And then I pull the best answers into this bank, this kind of knowledge bank of snippets that we can draw on to help our clients better. And so no one will have been watching this as closely as I've been working on it, but let's take the coaching page, for example. I think that's been through something like 200 iterations over the last 14 years. Well, and that's just because I'm a little bit obsessive. I just want to really always put my best foot forward. And so I'll take the same approach when it comes to the materials that we provide for clients. And so that is just a gradual improvement in things over time. There's nothing that's a sudden leap forward, because if it isn't broke, let's not change things. Often we can change the way things are done, thinking that it is going to be better and it ending up not. For example, the app that we tried, where we're thinking of shifting everybody over into an app where they would log, they would message us and track, and it just didn't work. It just became far too messy. and the clients didn't like it. We thought it was going to be brilliant. We were really diligent about our testing.
Yeah.
And still, even then, it still fell apart. And it's like, damn it. Unfortunately, when we said to the clients, hey, we're thinking of moving away from this, they were like, thank you. I'm so happy with this. Right? Right. So,
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say has been the changes. And what would that build up to? I think in a 10-year period, the overall process is going to be very familiar, but the specifics are all going to have changed, if that makes sense. I can't even begin to try and say how things will have changed overall in those 10 years. Yeah, I think that was a great question to ask, and I'm looking forward to potentially working with Tom again. Anything you can think to add there?
Not specifically. I think what you said about making gradual improvements to the way we do things and just kind of like whether it's changing like the spreadsheet, the tracking spreadsheet, we're like cleaning that up, removed a few things. Or just, I remember in the beginning when people would sign up, we would send them a really long welcome sequence that was like 6 long emails. And people were like, oh, it's kind of overwhelming. So we condensed that a little bit. I'm not really adding much, but it's been really cool to see like how we've evolved things and how you're like very receptive to feedback. And we are always making sure that we're trying to improve things. I've even had that in the 3.5 years, like clients that I had right when I started who have left and come back. And even in the time they're gone, I know you've done this, but we've improved things a bit. It's a lot more streamlined now. We've kind of cleaned up things up a bit, so it's easier to read the data. And everyone's been very appreciative of it. It's cool to see that.
Yeah, I see it as it's always a work in progress. Always a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's like, as someone said, oh, what have you changed about the Muscle and Strength Pyramid books for the 3rd edition? I was just, God, there's so much. Now, we do have a chapter in each book for that, but like it's just so much. I mean, it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to explain. There are complete rewrites. Anyway, if you're listening to this, you're wondering about coaching through these last couple of months of the year, frankly, we're probably full because we launched the challenge at the time of recording this and we're probably full. However, if you want to go to ripbody.com/coaching and apply, is just put your name, email address there. I'll let you know when a spot opens up. And yeah, look forward to speaking with you. Nothing further to add. That can be the pod. Catch you next time. Thank you, guys.
Peace.
Peace.